It's almost been a week since Justin Trudeau stepped down as the Prime Minister of Canada. You know, you'd almost think that there was a sense of relief to Canadians, but so far, not yet, because there's so much going on in the political arena right now with, our new Prime Minister, unelected, of course. And, for those of you that want to keep telling me how a prime minister gets elected, please understand that, yes, I understand you have to vote for the MP. And if that MP is a member of a political party, then that goes towards the vote of them becoming prime minister. But you know what? Let's be honest. I don't know anybody in their right mind that looks at an MP and says, well, I like that person, not their party. They normally go for the party in all the municipalities in Canada. So let's be honest, you know what, truth be told, yes, you do vote in the Prime Minister because there's nobody voting for an MP that says, I hate the guy that's heading up the party. So let's just be clear. I just want to clear the waves right there, make sure everybody understands, yeah, I know a fair bit about politics. But, one of the things about politics is, of course, there's all sorts of players in the arena. And one of the things that I found very interesting was what President Donald Trump had to say about Trudeau.
Look, I deal with every country, indirectly or directly. One of the nastiest countries to deal with is Canada. The people that, now this was Trudeau, the people that good old Justin, I call him Governor Trudeau, his people were nasty. And they weren't telling the truth. They never told the truth.
Wow. You know what? As a Canadian, I have to agree with President Trump on this one. You know what? Trudeau's cabinet is nasty. The funny thing is it really hasn't changed much. Most of the nastiness is still there. Now Carney's heading it up. But quite frankly, there's still a lot of people in place that, President Trump did refer to being nasty, and, they continue on their nasty ways. But one of the things that I thought we should do is maybe let's check in on what happens when a prime minister steps down. And look at that. Look at him being just a simpleton Canadian. The people that, he really didn't care about. And where is he? Canadian Tire. Now, of course, when you get posts and photo ops, I was just wondering, did he go there to get a job application? I don't know if he's fit to actually stock the shelves, but you know what? You got to start somewhere. After all, he was the Prime Minister of Canada for 10 years. So, you know what? He's got to get an entry-level position now. And hopefully, he gets to find out what hard work really means. Now, of course, we got Mark Carney. He is our newest installed Prime Minister. Whatever anybody wants to say, look, the guy just got railroaded into the position, and there's so much going on with Carney surrounding him, talking about Canada really being, should be part of the EU. Hey, Mark, there's a lot of water between us, but hey, you do what you think is best for you. And that's what he's doing right now. The only person Carney cares about is Carney. They call him, carnage, they call him, catastrophic, crash, whatever you want to call him, but he's not, and everybody's going to fight me on this, but you know what? He's not a true Canadian. Yeah, I know people sit there and say, what are you talking about, Todd? He's got a place in Canada. Yes, and he's got 3 passports, okay? One of them being Canadian, of course, British, and I believe it's Irish. Anyways, the fact is that he's not, a steadfast Canadian, and he prefers to be over in Europe as opposed to being in Canada. Look, he's going to continue to do things. But another thing that I found very interesting is what President Trump had to say about the Liberals.
The Liberal Party is going to win now in the next election, most likely. And they were down and out. Isn't that going to make them more hostile to us and possibly
I'd rather deal with a liberal than a
for China closer to Canada, and that would really put us in a bind.
The conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal actually with a liberal.
Okay, so there you go. Donald Trump just endorsed the Liberals. Easier to deal with. I don't know. Is that easier to manipulate, beat up? Hey, Pierre, maybe you should talk nice to Trump, instead of sitting there, hiding behind your keyboard and vetting on him. This is the one thing. It doesn't matter what party, what leader's in place. Guys, you need to talk to him. You're sitting there hiding behind posts, like Carney, right out of the gate. I'm not talking to him. Look, Carney, there's the biggest olive branch you're ever going to get from Donald Trump is that, he might prefer to deal with, a liberal government. Look, I don't see anything bigger coming from him. And if you're going to be that stupid, then you're going to have to sit there and suffer the consequences. But the only problem is that you don't suffer the consequences. We Canadians do. So you know what? That goes back to my narrative. Carney, are you truly going to be a Canadian prime minister that's watching out for Canadians? Or are you just going to be like your predecessor and turn around and watch out for yourself, pad the rest of your company profits, and turn around and make all sorts of deals before a true election comes in and we get to decide who we want as the prime minister of the country? This is the kind of thing that we have to be aware of. But it's amazing how the tone has changed for some politicians. And, taking a look at Premier Doug Ford, he was ready. He said he was going to hit them twice as hard. He was going to cut off their electricity. He was going to just have a good old brawl with the United States. It's amazing. I'm not sure what he's on or what changed his mind, but listen how he toned it down.
Well, they aren't coming into our country to take over. I'll tell you that. And I kind of flipped this around. What a compliment. We'll never be a 51st state. Canada's not for sale. But isn't it nice that someone thinks we have the greatest country in the world and they want access? And my simple answer to that is, you want access, let's build an Amcan fortress that I've been saying.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, at one minute, you could see his eyes were bulging out of his head. His fists were clenched. He's going to go take them on. And now he's taking it as a compliment that the United States would like us to become a 51st state. So, it's interesting. I guess I'm not sure I would say time heals all wounds, but time definitely has a play on a lot of people and how they do things. And right now, Premier Ford is now, I think, trying to do a little bit of reverse psychology, saying, okay, thanks, yes, appreciate it as a compliment. Look, again, opening conversation is going to be the most important thing on how we deal with tariffs. And tariffs, I think everybody has to understand, is Canada has tariffs on the United States already. U.S. has tariffs on Canada. Again, the whole panic issue that screws up everybody is the fact that not everybody has full knowledge of what is going on. And that's one of the things and one of the reasons why I like doing the Simple Podcast is, I do break it down and, some people say, hey, you make it a little too simple. But the fact is that it's not as difficult as everybody believes, okay? If you could treat a country like a business, then we want businessmen running the country, okay? But we want true businessmen that are actually looking out for the good of their employees / the people, the population. This is where I beg to differ when I talk about, I can't even call him prime minister. It kind of makes me sick. Mark Carney is the fact that he might be a businessman who was part of, a major corporation, but I don't think he really cared about his employees, just as I don't truly believe he is watching out for Canadians. The only people that can watch out for Canadians really is you and I. The true Canadians, hardworking, tax-paying Canadians. And, one of the things I'd love to do is hear your comments and what your thoughts are, what's going on right now with what's happening in politics. But most importantly, as I always leave it every single week, one of the most important things I think you should do, watch out your family, your friends, your children, and of course, the next generation, one of the most important things we can do. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Todd C. Slater.